what we've sown. And hopefully what we've sown is something good, because as the scriptures teaches us in Galatians chapter 6, you will reap what you sow. We reap what we sow. This is the month of harvest. It is a number. It is, when we add those kind of numbers up, we realize that these things are foreseen. Harvest and all these things are done in the Old Testament. When you look at them, you'll see why we are able to see certain things like harvest in the stars and in the change of temperature and things of that sort. I want to bring this up to you so we understand. We're going to connect some dots. What I mean by that is we're going to connect some spiritual dots with natural and secular dots, and what's going on in our world and what's going on in the spirit. In the olden days, or days before the manufacturers came in, those pictures where you saw people working in plants, building cars and building farm equipment, and when they were running all of these different looms where they were coming up with cotton and fabric and colors and print and things of that sort. These were considered to be manufacturing plants. These are the kind of plants that our government, our current government, keeps promising people that they will come back, that they will one day be here again. In other words, you will be manufacturing cars again. You will be bringing your metal lunch pail with your bologna sandwich and your little drink or whatever in the thermos jug and of coffee, and you will be coming back to the plant, and you will be making a decent wage, living in a decent house, and you'll come home that night, and your wife will have your dinner on the table, and the children will be massaging your feet, and you will then become, again, king of your house. And so they promised this to you, and so they said, this will happen for you. We will bring these jobs back. And it never dawns on people how the world has literally changed and how the world keeps changing. That was during the Industrial Revolution and during industrial times. The world changes. And people don't realize what the world is based on, what America is based on. America is based on capitalism. America is based on money. It is based on the purse. It is based on the bag. It is based on the coin. It is based on I get mine, you then get yours. And America, they sometimes take pity on you if you don't have anything, but after a while they'll give you a little something, but they say, well, God bless you and everything, but I need to take care of my own stuff, so I'll see you later. This is the country that we are living in. The American dream is to be able to be Beyonce. The American dream is to be able to be on stage. The American dream, if not that high, is to be able to live in some way to where you will become the rich, and the poor that you are now will be later, further on back in the back part of your memory. In other words, which is one of the reasons when people say all of your money and tax cuts are going to the rich. If you vote for this person, the person says, I'm going to cut the taxes for the rich and for the top 1%. We're going to cut the taxes. They say it out loud, up in the open, from the podium to everybody, and everybody who is out in the audience begins to scream and cheer. And I'm sitting there wondering, why are you screaming and cheering? Because the rich are taking the money, the top 1%. All of your money is being squeezed from the government up to the top 1%. Why are you screaming and cheering? until you finally understand the spiritual mentality of this country. Everything comes from the Spirit, because most of them that are sitting in there believe, if they're following that candidate, believe in this theory called manifest destiny. Manifest destiny is a theory in America that was produced by John L. Sullivan and the guy that said, "Go west, young man." They produced this theory that America's destiny was to move from east to west. They proved, or in their spiritual logic, because this is what came actually from the preachers and the theologians. The preacher, John Edwards, had preached that God always moves from east to west. So the gospel that moved from the Middle East toward Western Europe now moved from Western Europe across the Atlantic Ocean toward west, going toward this country that we call America. And then from America, the New York, the eastern coast would move toward the west, or the Pacific coast, which let them know in their spiritual puny minds that God was moving west, and that it was America that was in their plan, in God's mind and in God's plan, that they were to take over the entire world, or plains and colonies or whatever of the United States. It wasn't the United States then, until it got all the way to the West Coast, which we call California. They believed that God had given all of this to them, and it was their manifest destiny to take it however they needed to take it, by war, by cut, by scoundrels, by good, by bad. In other words, they could lie in order to take it. It does not matter, as long as they were doing it under the guise of God. Because if it was under the disguise of God, it was for the good of the people, the indigenous people, the African slaves. It was good for the Asian. It was good for the Jews who had not yet decided whether they were black or white yet at that particular time. They've since changed and figured out now. But they've decided that the manifest destiny of America was to make this country what it is supposed to be, because God gave it to them as their new Jerusalem. Now, their new Jerusalem was the fact that this is where God would come down, place his foot, create the war. Pull all these terms out of there. Create the battle and the war that would take place in the Middle East. It would actually take place on the soil of the United States. And that America was supposed to usher in the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ when the rapture took place. What does that have to do with me? If you don't understand how people think, you will not understand what is happening to you. I must help you to understand how people think. One of the questions that people are asking right now, they ask it all the time: why do people who are white not like people who are black? Why is it that they don't like black skin? What is it about black people that you don't like? And when you ask people that, they really don't answer it, because sometimes they don't even know, or they just won't tell you. They're not sure. But there is something that is deep within that causes this. I never ask people that question. Why don't you like black? I know why they don't. I just happen to know. So there's no need of me asking that question anymore. So it doesn't matter what they say. When someone doesn't like you, you understand it. And one of the things they use is the word colorblind. They'll tell you, there are some churches you can walk in and they'll say, "Sister, brother, We're colorblind here. And whenever you hear that, turn around and run. I want you to imagine yourself walking up, if you happen to be a dark-skinned person in here, because we have people of different shades or whatever. If you happen to be a dark-skinned person here and walk up to another dark-skinned person, I want you to imagine yourself telling them, don't worry, we're colorblind. How would you feel if someone who was your shade told you they were colorblind? You would feel insulted. You would say, colorblind what? In other words, when I see you, I'm colorblind. What do you mean by that? Now, someone that we consider white, and understand, I get tired of actually defining this. White and black, these are, artists consider them colors, but they are not truly colors. They are basically, people, human beings are brown going on up to eggshell and vanilla and whatever and pink or whatever. And black people going on into mocha and coffee with a dash of cream and and moving up into that particular area and, deep dark chocolate and things of that sort. That's what's on the color wheel. White and black become political terms. It becomes terms that we deal that was created by race. We talked a lot about that last week. I go back and remember, so I don't want to repeat too much. But we talked a lot about it and where it actually came from. And we understood that it came from theology. It came from two things. It came from the curse of Ham, that God cursed that Noah cursed his grandson. And it also came from the fact that when Cain had killed Abel and God punished Cain, it says that God put a mark on Cain, and it says that the mark was black. Now, God never said that the mark he put on Cain was black. Nor does it say that the curse that Noah gave to his grandson was black. It just says that he says that you shall serve the rest of your brothers and shall, bring their water and be carriers of their water for generations after generation after generation. But it never said that the symbol of this is that you are black. And that's how we will know you, because your skin color is black. So if God never said it, somebody made it up. Am I right or wrong? Now, if God said, Cain, you're going to be black, then we know God said it. Then we can debate and go that way. But God never said it. So evidently, the curse and black is not connected. Black and curse is not connected. Someone created that. Another theory you've heard me tell you is what you call pre-Genesis or pre-Adamic Genesis, or a post type of Adamic covenant. In other words, where you two Adams, and you had the more prehistoric animalistic Adam and Eve, and then you had the white Adam and Eve that looked like you see in the little movie and the pictures of this beautiful woman with this long blonde hair. And this man, Adam, his muscles and everything, and this is Adam and this is Eve, and these are they're all blonde. They all started off everything. How do you get that color skin from brown earth? If God formed man from the dust of the earth, he didn't even form the woman. He formed the woman out of the man. In other words, because she was already in there, so whatever was in him became her. And then whenever God brings something, he brings something good. It's always a good gift. Adam never brought Eve into being. God brought Eve into being. The Bible says that God brought the woman to the man. I doubt very seriously that God changed her color since it started off on the dark earth. Why would God, let me bleach you here because you need to be bleached before I get you to him, okay? No. These are little things you're going to begin to find. So now that you understand there was no curse there, then people of color were never cursed. Never from the beginning were ever cursed. Well, it wasn't going to hold up. The whole God curse thing after 1800s and things was fading out a little bit. It wasn't going to be the curse. So what they had to do is they had to, well, around 1700s they came up with it. They had to come up with a scientific curse. So they proved that in the original Adam and Eve that were white, there was a genetic theme or thread that was going through that whiteness and intelligence was in the gene of the or the actual original Adam and Eve that was not in the pre-Adam and Eve, which were more animalistic. Which meant that people of color who came from the pre-Adam and Eve kind of thing were less in intelligence. That was number one. Number two, another reason was that they were lewd. They were considered to be sexual deviants. There was an overpowering drive of sex among people of dark skin. So what they said was this: therefore you must be careful. Number one, because of the lack of intelligence, they cannot run. Now this is in the 17 and 1800s. I ain't talking about now. They cannot run your company. They cannot do this for you because they can mimic you, but they cannot think logically and with reason. They can look at you and mimic you as an animal can, but they are not actually thinking. The sexual scenario was, therefore, do not let the men next to your white woman or he will corrupt her because of his overdrive of sex. Look, I'm talking to you from history. I'm not talking to you from some sex novel. And I know my kids are here. This is history. That is how they see. So therefore, no matter how old the dark child is, if the frailer, non-melanated child feels threatened, then they will put now this dark child, based on new age limits, into prison at 14. 14. Just because the 14-year-old can catch a football, has muscles, and can move. You ever talk to a 14-year-old? Some of them are real nice, but talk to them sometime. see what's going on. So, but you got those two things, and so now you got, here is why. And spiritually, of course, we understand the curse is still there. They are not of God. So it does not matter what happens when they come to your church. Well, they're supposed to be at your church because of a predominantly white church, because we're the only ones that can teach them. They never learn anything in a black-led church, because the black pastor of that church does not understand spiritual things or God as we understand God. Because you see, our God is about freedom. 4th of July. How do you really feel during the 4th of July? I know how you feel. Piece of barbecue. But what do you feel free from? Now let's move to the other side and ask them, what do you feel free from on the 4th of July? Nothing happened to you. So why do you feel free? Well, we celebrate the 4th of July because we're free from England. England? When is the last time you felt that you were chained by England? Well, it's just a holiday. Well, of course it's just a holiday. So now when you grasp that, you realize freedom means different things to different people. Freedom for one group of people means we want the freedom to rip off our masks during COVID. We want the freedom to be able to go to our house of worship even while COVID is going on and the government can't tell us you can't go to church. We want to have the right to go and not stand away from other people. We want to have the right to breathe in their face. And anyone that's not doing that has no faith in God. So when we begin to grasp these things, what does freedom mean to you? Freedom means that we are taking freedom all over the world. When we drop bombs on Gaza, when we tell Israel, which is not the Israel that we know, that's in the Bible. That Israel you see on the map is a place of colonization that came from the Europeans, from England. That's not the Israel. When you see, and God's hand was upon Israel, that's not that Israel. This Israel was done in 1946. This has to do, that country you're talking about, that's the Middle East. The Middle East. Connect the land. That land is not disconnected. They can walk from all the way from Israel all down through Gaza on into Egypt, which is in Africa. All of this is Africa, but they need to divide it and call it the Middle East. What about the ones in Lebanon and going on up and understand who these people are? If you look in the Bible, these are the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Mergazites, all of those. These are all these different people. They're all ites because to us, they look the same. Not necessarily the same, but they look the same because these are all people of color and they came from where they came from, the dust of the earth. Jesus comes out of Gaza. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. All of these different things we understand. When you have people who are signing bombs, and when America takes freedom to the world, America is taking their standard of democracy. What they call democracy to Iraq and Iran and to other countries, America is here to set you free. And not only that, we are also bringing the gospel through our missionaries to your homes about Jesus. So democracy and Jesus and the flag go hand in hand, which is why you can go in many of the churches that are predominantly white in Houston, and you notice I keep saying predominantly white. I don't seem to be shrinking away from the word white because the whole country is talking white now. Everybody is. Don't say that word. If we stop talking about that word, then we need to stop saying that word. So therefore, because we're colorblind now, we are not colorblind. You made up the term. Now that you've made it up and black culture has been built around it, you can't just throw it away now. We got to deal with it. And then you say, well, you have to let the word white. Don't talk black and white. You got to let it go. And what do you want me to do? Just let it go. Pay the reparation. Well, we're not paying that. We don't have enough money for that. Okay. Just let the word go. Just stop talking about it because you're making our children nervous. Okay, stop talking about it. And we need to reconcile. Reconcile what? I was a part of what was called the reconciliation movement, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let my wonderful, nice youth fool you. I've been around the block a couple of times. But I was around during the moments of reconciliation. Any of you seen any of my earlier magazine articles? I dealt and wrote on reconciliation between the black and the white community when I was trying to get them to understand as well as us to understand how it is possible for us to live with one another in peace and harmony and things of that sort. But the whole thing about that said, okay, we need to reconcile. And so they came up with something different. And I said, what is it? well, we're going to apologize for slavery. I said, okay. And so they came in, Mr. Copeland, Mr. Henn, Mr. Roberts, all of them came in. I was with all of them. And they stood there before Sandra and I, and they cried and wept and apologized for slavery and how white people treated black people. And a space took place. And they said, it's your turn, Ed. I said, my turn for what? They said to apologize how black people had treated white people. I said, I don't have nothing to apologize for. First of all, I can't apologize for black people. That's number one. I have not been given that authority. Number two, if you did that to us, what are we apologizing for? Well, in order for sins to be forgiven, both sides have to apologize. No. The side that has wronged the other person has to come to understanding of their wrongness and apologize. Unconditional love is based on the fact that I can apologize even if I feel I was wronged. I don't demand anything from the other person. So now you want me to apologize for being what you created in this country. No. And one of the ladies that was there, non-melanated lady, gave Sandra a ring. And Sandra went, no, I don't want. I said, take the ring. Sandra took the ring, put it on the finger. In other words, I want this to be a symbol of and on and on and on. And this, these are stories I could tell you all day long. But the bottom line is, what we never saw was the crossover to where I could preach in the pulpit of a Second Baptist, and then the Second Baptist pastor could always come preach for me. I had no problem with it. ALC has seen people come through there, melanated, non-melanated. But when it came to me, I said, why don't you let me come in there and preach to your congregation? Well, it may not be the time right now. I'm sure it isn't. I'm not going to say nothing about nothing. I'm not going to talk about the slaves. I promise you I won't talk about them. But it's just the fact that we can't hear from you because, you see, you're cursed. And there's the sexuality thing. Some of our women might fall in love with you. I mean, I am cute. I mean, for an older guy. Thank you. But the point I'm trying to make is, this is where we are. And one of the things I'm calling for right now, and I shouldn't say calling for, I'm asking people of color, maybe they need to step out of predominantly white churches for a while. Well, you can't tell people where to go to church. I said, I thought about that, prayed about that, got on my knees and talked to the Lord about that. I'm not telling anybody where to go. What I'm saying to people is maybe you need to step away for a while. I was watching a popular black talk show, and there was a white pastor that was on this talk show talking about how he got up there and had to tell his non-melanated church, y'all wrong. And he did. Some of them clapped, some of them didn't. But here comes my point. Why do you have to bring someone on that is non-melanated to tell us what I've been teaching for the last 15 years? And you the main guy that keeps talking about we don't need to in other words, bringing in people who are non-melanated to tell us something that we already know. You the main guy, but yet you did. You haven't even reached out to me, maybe because I don't have the numbers that I need. I don't know, but you have not reached out to me. You know where I am. I know this material probably better than you. And if I don't matter. I know enough on the church side. And here is the thing. We are dealing with two gods. We are dealing with Christianity or religion incorporated and the Christianity of Jesus Christ. I am a follower of Jesus Christ and his teachings, and I do not follow in Christianity Incorporated, whose mascot is the Jesus of long blonde hair, looking up at the sky with blue eyes. I do not follow, nor do I connect with, nor do I give to, nor do I worship that Jesus. As a matter of fact, you don't even know what my Jesus looks like. I have spent years making that Jesus a cosmic Jesus, which means he is power, he is the force, he is the one that has brought me to the Father himself, to the force itself, Luke Skywalker. I am not on the dark side. Dark is light, light is dark. What have I come to understand? What I've come to understand is that this power of God lives within me, which is what you don't want to be taught. It is impossible, because when you say I'm cursed, God cannot live inside of me. There can be no divinity inside of me. You came out of Europe with what was called during 1620, which was called the Geneva Bible. You didn't even bring the Bible that was created in 1611, just a few years earlier, by King James, because you didn't believe in the King James Version. You were Puritans. You left England with the Geneva Bible, because the Geneva Bible taught that there was separation between black and white. And you begin to teach out of that Bible in America, and you begin to teach the indigenous people how to be Christians, how to pray, and how to finally put on their pants, because they didn't want to wear pants. They liked their little tunics, but you didn't want them to wear tunics because you said that was sexual. And what you discovered about your religion is that your religion was not Christ-centered, it was sex-centered. You're so concerned about sexual sin, but yet cannot consider race as a sin. You don't even see racial systems in America. There's just a few bad apples. Why are you so deep into pornography? Why are you so deep in protecting women and their sexuality? Why are you so deep in hiding your women in the kitchen? Why do we hear so much about you? Why do we hear so much about young boys, young girls? And you cannot even seem to bring the evidence to the Congress. And you are the ones, the Christians are the ones that put him in office. But yet you have not stood up and say, this is wrong, sir. Why? Because you have traded in your Christ for Christianity Incorporated. You have erred. You have left the fold. And no longer are we going to stand and act like your Christianity anymore. Who do we worship? We worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We worship our God, the mighty force of the universe, the one who has created all things. In him, the gravitational pull of solar systems and galaxies are all over and keeps everything in place. When planets collide with one another and exude power, when stars go supernova, we worship the God that understands how everything must be in place. We worship a God who spoke and out of his mouth came light. We worship a God who spoke and creation may have taken thousands and thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of years, but it doesn't matter how long it takes. He spoke it. Well, it only took 7 days. Well, then that must be a very powerful seed. But seeds have to be planted. When you plant a seed, then the seed has to grow. Even Jesus did not become Jesus overnight. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God. Jesus did not know God's stuff until later on in his life. I'm sorry, some things are not making sense. Jesus never asked us to worship him. He spoke to us and said, I am your older brother. Follow me. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Faith in Jesus Christ is to learn from Jesus Christ. And he will teach us how to get to the Father, how to connect with the Father, how to work with the power of creation itself. We work with the Holy Spirit. And we only got really 2, maybe 3 commandments. Not the 10, we don't need them. We got them, they're nice. But our commandments are very simple. That the teacher that taught us, we follow him. And he said, love the Lord with all of your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. And to love your neighbor as yourself. I call them 3 commandments. For most churches, many times there are churches that are non-melanated only got 2. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. It has to be 3 for us, for our people, because you got to love your neighbor as yourself. But if you've been taught for 400 years not to love yourself, then it's hard for you to love your neighbor. So I have to teach how to love ourselves, how to look at each other and love the Christ that I see on the other side of my eyesight. To look at you, my brother and my sister, and see Jesus inside of you and love you because I love you, not to be afraid of you or ashamed of you or to look down upon, because that was taught to us. This is why you have to come. You don't have to come to ALC, but this is why you need to get out, at least for a little while. These men call me all the time and say, Ed, I'm not being funny, but maybe black people don't need to be at my church right now because I'm getting ready to cuss these folk out. And I need to be able to say it because they'll be embarrassed if it's too many black people in the church when I say it to them. They don't like it. Well, invite me on that Sunday. I'd love to be there. But they say we need to do some house cleaning among our people. And we need to let them do some house cleaning among our people, among their people, until they're ready to rejoin the body of the Christian community and to talk love again. No, we're not going after the gay people. They did. That's on their agenda. That's on their documents. They're worried about the gay people and the trans people. Why are they so worried about sexuality that they're not even involved in? That's somebody else's business. Why are they worried about these things in Congress? That's some scary stuff. So my thing is this. Let's follow the love of Jesus Christ. Understand how this world is working. And realize that as a people, we have never been cursed ever in history. And it's going to take some generations for them to get over it. But in the meantime, you got to build for yourself. Bring your presents home. If you just still want to sit there, then bring your pocketbooks home. That's why you give online. You can give online back to your home church where you found Jesus. Back to your home church where you grew in the Lord. You say, well, I go over there for networking. Networking with who? You ain't going to get the better job. Haven't you figured out? They already told you now. It's up. It's over. You ain't getting it. Project 2025 says you ain't going to get it. Learn to depend on yourself now. Depend on the people that are around you. When you make friends with people who are melanated or non-melanated, you'll know when they're friends of yours. And be friends with the people that are your friends. It doesn't matter what color is in their skin, but you got to know them. Don't value anybody because of the color of their skin. Every member that has ever come through ALC who has been non-melanated said, Pastor Ed Montgomery, just stand up and tell the truth about things without being vindictive, without being mad or angry at somebody. I said, I'm not. They said, just keep telling it. Because if you don't tell us, nobody else will. And that's what I do. Anyway, my time is up. Thank you so much for listening today. Hello, my friends. I'm Ed Montgomery. You know me, Pastor Ed, Dr. Ed. Thank you so much for doing what you do and contributing from your heart. People think giving comes from the pocket. Never has. It comes directly from the heart. In the world that we're living in right now, so many changes, so many things happening that will make us lose our faith. Listen, I've got to teach more than I've ever taught. Stay online more than I've ever been online. Because it's not just going to be enough to encourage. We're reteaching the faith. That's right, reteaching the faith. Because we have to begin to strengthen the teaching so that people who've never heard this gospel like this before can hear it and continue to move on. So when you give, you're pushing me and telling me and challenging me to keep going forward. Take a moment, go to myalc.org. That's myalc.org, myalc.org, and go ahead and click that donate button. It is safe, it is secure, and not only that, but it only takes just a couple of minutes, maybe even a few seconds for those of you that are already signed up. Or if you want to use your phone, wherever you're watching or however you're watching, you can use text to give. And that's 713-742-2035, 713-742-2035. Or you can go old school and you can write a check and send it in to Abundant Life Center or Ed Montgomery. It doesn't go into my pocket, it goes into our ministry. 772-300, Houston, Texas, 77215. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for what you already do. I am praying for you, and I'm praying the best over your gift and over the offering. And I pray that abundance will continue to flow in your life in so many different ways. It'll warm your heart. God bless you.